You can focus on the goal or you can focus on the obstacle, but you can't focus on both. When you're focused on the goal, obstacles come up, but it's just like a hurdle hopping over the fence. But if you start focusing on the fence, you lose sight of the obstacle, and that slows you down and really gets in your head. And so the burn the boats and all of that, like plan A is plan A and plan B is plan A. Like, I love that because that's really how you achieve success.
There's 3 skills that you need. You need like a knowledge of real estate, you need a knowledge of property management, but you also need to understand what an entrepreneur is and have a mindset. So when you said mindset, it sort of triggered for me a common sense of entrepreneurship that I saw. There certainly is a personality that allowed for that accelerated growth. Everyone associates entrepreneur with an ability to sell. That's not necessarily true in every case.
Welcome to the Property Management Success Podcast, where we interview leaders in the industry to uncover the secrets to profitability, efficiency, and achieving true freedom, whether it's your time, money, or lifestyle. I'm your host, Tony Cline, and I'm here to help you build a wildly successful property management business. Let's get to it. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Property Management Success Podcast. I'm here with Randall Henderson today. Randall, how are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you, Tony? Thanks for having me.
I'm doing well. Yeah, I've been excited to have you on for a while. I wanted to get into some of your background, and rather than doing an intro, I just want to jump right into it because I think we got a lot to talk about, and you've got a really unique perspective on the property management space just because of your ability to have insights into so many different companies. So maybe you could share a little bit about your background and, kind of how we got to where we are today.
Yeah. Well, it was a dark and stormy night in 1977. No, just kidding. So I started investing in real estate in the early 2000s. Eventually realized that I had a knack for managing my properties, and I thought, why not manage for others? So I built a property management company for about 6 years, had that open and running, and was doing other things too, mainly just feeding in my investments. So ultimately, I decided to sell the company in 2013 and found an opportunity for a newer franchise selling property management businesses. I always felt like teaching was kind of my passion, so I was hired as the trainer at that company to help new aspiring entrepreneurs who were starting franchises and starting property management companies, help train them, help get them launched. And I did that for 10 years. And we grew from, at PMI, Property Management Inc., from around 35 franchises to about 400 plus in the 10 years that I was there. So when you talk about seeing a lot of different companies start up, I really did. I saw kind of some commonalities between those companies starting up. I saw some pitfalls, some successes. It was really a unique journey there at PMI.
So before we jump into that, which I'm really fascinated by that, and I want to get to that, but you grew a business on your own. I want to talk a little bit about the size of that, and then I love to get into the psychological and emotional reasons why people do things. And so I'm curious. You had this thing that you built on your own, and how many doors? How big was it? Like, how long did you have that?
Yeah, I was doing short-term rentals before they were cool. That's what I always say. I was doing it early. There was no Airbnb at the time. I was kind of building that business. I got up to about 50 of the short-term and mid-term side because I had transitioned into corporate housing for a while. So just 50. I owned 19 of them myself. And so it was definitely a unique and interesting business to grow. Not a lot of technology options. As I mentioned, I sold in 2013 before kind of there were a lot of great space that we have now. So definitely the early days of certainly short-term property management.
And what made you wake up and just say, I think I'm done with that. Let me look for a different opportunity.
Just changes in my personal life. I had been a pharmaceutical sales rep for many years as well. And as that career kind of wrapped up and I had been doing more in real estate, a development aspect had kind of started to take over. and I was passionate about developing and building, and so I was doing that. I was a little bit scattered all over the place and needed to consolidate, and I felt like maybe the property management piece was taking me away from what I really wanted to do, which was to teach in some way.
Hmm. And so is that what led you into looking for the franchise? Because there's a lot of ways to grow property management companies. There's just get on YouTube at this point and try to learn everything that you can learn. And, you hear like the surface level crust of what's going on in property management by doing that. But, really digging in and seeing you can jump on with a franchise company. You can go to work for somebody for a few years, learn how they do it, and then kind of become a descendant, I guess, of their methodologies and work the way they do it. So PMI at the time was one of the few franchises. I think there's a few more that have kind of popped
Sure.
up, and I don't know who was first or whatever, but they were the first one actually that I had heard of. And how did you get into that, and what was your role when you started, and then kind of what did that evolve into?
That's a good question. And I mean, this is always difficult to explain to people that there is, as you said, a lot of different ways to start a property management company, which trying to explain that you're doing franchising for a property management startup, which is management of third parties, like it's really convoluted. But I was attracted to PMI because, this vision, and I connected with this idea that these entrepreneurs can break out of their day to day. Almost every franchise that I worked with at PMI was someone who had a dream to leave their 9 to 5 and to open their own business. Franchising is really good for someone who has that experience, but really maybe not a serial entrepreneur. Maybe they need a leg up, they need some help, and they really need kind of a stack of technology as well as a lot of hand holding and like someone to walk that journey with them. And so that super attractive to me. I feel like very rewarding to see a dream. And I can tell you names of many, many individuals came in with zero experience in real estate, zero experience in property management, who built multi-million-dollar businesses in a period of 5, 6, 7 years. It's really rewarding and very, very cool to be a part of. The flip side is that many came in with a dream and a hope, and they failed. They fell on their face, and it was really difficult to walk that journey with them as well. So you kind of get both sides on the franchise side.
Did you have very many people that already had a fairly successful property management business where they amassed a number of doors where they were able to manage it themselves, but they just couldn't grow beyond that? They were looking for,
Certainly.
where do I go from here, and they were able to plug into that.
Yeah, if you were to talk about percentage, maybe 10 to 15% of incoming franchisees fall into that category. And as you know, Tony, there's like levels that are where you get to and you get stuck. And I feel like that first one happens at maybe around between 75 and 100 doors. You start to feel like I'm a little bit stuck. I don't know where to go. And it's typically the hiring piece that is the hardest piece at that level. And then you run into another barrier, I feel like at around 250 to 300, where it's more operational problems at that point, where you maybe don't have, your systems and processes down. And as you mentioned to me the other day, systems are not the solution in every case, or processes are not necessarily the solutions, but you have to have those worked out in order to scale effectively.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe we can dive into that conversation a little deeper, but we'll circle back to that if we've got time. Um, but I'm curious. So you had a lot of people that were looking to get into the business, and a lot of the people that listen to this podcast, they've already got established businesses and they're up and running. But I do have people that also listen to it that are like, "How do I get started?"
Sure.
And so this is, by the way, this is not like a commercial for a franchising system, but that was your experience, and so I want to dig into that. So, what do you think you were able to help people through your systems and through the things that you guys had already set up, where people stepped into that? So we'll deal with the newbies first, right? The people
Yeah.
who just get
Yeah.
in. What were you able to provide that led them to have more rapid success than they might have experienced on their own, that we might be able to share some of these nuggets with people who haven't had the opportunity to jump in, but they're getting started and they're looking for ways to grow their business and structure it.
Yeah, it's a great question. And if you would have asked me that a year or two after I started with PMI, I would have given one answer, which would have been related to a tech stack and, you know, some training up front. As you mentioned earlier, though, and today my answer is very different because people can access knowledge today very much easier. It's very available, and so today's franchise success, the reason why a franchise works, I think, in for many people, is that you have a built-in accountability partner. You've got someone who's checking in with you regularly. How are you doing on your sales this month? What's going on in your business? What challenges do you have? And it feels like much more of a, like a hand-holding partnership than I think you can find if you're just an entrepreneur who doesn't need that franchise support. Maybe it's a motivation piece, it's an accountability piece. And I felt like always the franchises who were the most engaged with us on the corporate side, who I knew what was happening in their businesses, their likelihood of success was much higher. So that engagement and accountability is probably the number one thing I think franchises can provide. Yes, they shortcut a lot of the decisions that you might have to make on how to hire and how to train and how to, build a tech stack. But at the end of the day, like you said, that knowledge can be found on YouTube.
Yeah. So that's getting into and getting a little momentum going.
Mhm.
Now that you've got companies, and I don't know if you have the stats, but were there categories of like people typically got to a certain size and then there was this group of people and then others that kind of
Yeah.
surpassed that? And like, do you have averages of sizes of companies? Because I want to
Yeah.
ask you some questions, but I want our audience to understand the framework or the parameters around your answers. So
Yeah.
let's talk company sizes.
And I'll open up the book a little bit on PMI because so what we did is segmented the businesses based on revenue and typically door size very attached to that. So you had your startup companies, which were 0 to maybe around 30. And 30 is a big number in property management because if you can get 30 doors, you kind of have some momentum. You know what you're doing a little bit, and you can try to reach that next step. So companies who are between 30 and 80 doors, that was that next threshold. We called them solo companies. And then after 80, you kind of reach this new phase of growth. And then after growth, you're kind of in the master series. So when you're 250 plus or so doors, now you're talking about different things. So it's really interesting that you identified that as, and I'm sure you see it with the companies that you work with, getting people the right kind of information, the right kind of ability to scale at each of those steps is crucial. Today at PMI, I would imagine that probably 50% of the companies fall into that less than 100 doors or less than 80 doors. So in those first two thresholds, and then another maybe 35% in that growth between 80 doors and 250 doors. And then that last 15% or 10% is 250 plus. But it takes a lot and it takes years to get to that larger size for most companies. We certainly had we had rocket ships, stars that accelerated to 250 and above. Almost in every case, it was as a result of buying an existing company that can kind of springboard you forward and ahead in that life cycle.
So if you take that out of the picture, if you take purchasing another operation out, which that's another interesting conversation because they bought a franchise to give you systems, but then you bought a company that
Yes.
is typically already running. So
Well, in fact, Tony, we have a whole department. PMI has an entire department of acquisition, a team that will help companies who are newly started franchises look for opportunities and kind of broker those deals. So it's kind of a value add for the franchise.
hmm. Okay, so let's set that aside because I think
Yeah.
that's those I get calls all the time. Hey, how can I buy a company? And there's companies out there to purchase, but it's not everybody's, raising their hand and waving a flag saying, "Hey, I'm ready to sell." So,
Right. Yeah.
so let's set that aside for a minute. Let's talk about the other ways that people were able to kind of accelerate that growth. What did you see people out of the 400 companies who, when you looked at those companies, who grew the best, the fastest, had the
Yeah.
most success, and was that um, because they really leaned into systems? Was it a personality type? Was it the mindset? Like what really was the determining factor? If you can kind of narrow down to a few things
Yeah.
of success.
Yeah, I always say that when it comes to starting a property management company, there's three skills that you need. You need like a knowledge of real estate, you need a knowledge of property management, but you also need to understand what an entrepreneur is and have a mindset. So when you said mindset, it sort of triggered for me, a common sense of entrepreneurship that I saw. Um, there certainly is a personality that allowed for that accelerated growth. It is someone who, and again, everyone associates entrepreneur with an ability to sell. That's not necessarily true in every case. Selling is an important part of your business, but it's just one cog in the wheel. You have to be really good at it in order to scale quickly. But it doesn't necessarily have to be you that does it. You need to bring in that aspect and you need to focus on that and dedicate a very large percentage of your money coming in into sales and marketing in order to just pour fire there. But people who have an entrepreneur mindset of where they're responsible for everything that happens in their business. There's no one else to blame. There's no one to look at other than themselves in the mirror. They have ultimate ownership of their company and they're accountable for the success that they have. That's a hard conversation to have with someone who's failing, someone who's struggling. And so that's always where it kind of got sad for me is to see, on the flip side, those that don't have that personality to try to encourage them to take complete ownership of their business. If you want to make this happen, you have to go full all in. You have to, as I always say, burn the ships. Don't leave yourself an escape plan on the back end. Plan A is to succeed, and plan B is plan A. So like you just have to keep hitting your head against it until you break through. So it's more of a will issue than a skill issue, as I like to say.
Yeah, I love that. I like to say, and well, and we're going to talk a little bit about some adventure stuff here in a minute. So I'm going to throw in a little teaser here, but there's I like to say you can focus on the goal or you can focus on the obstacle, but you can't focus on both,
Oh,
right?
I like that.
When you're focused on the goal, obstacles come up, but it's just like a hurdle hopping over the fence. But if you start focusing on the fence, you lose sight of the obstacle, and that slows you down and really gets in your head. And so the burn the boats and all of that, like plan A is plan A and plan B is plan A. Like I love that because that's really how you achieve success. I think that success is built on the foundation of failure. So to
Yes.
expect to have success without failure is just unrealistic. But knowing that failure is a part of it along the way, it gives you a different perspective of, okay, well, I learned that didn't work, but those lessons I learned now help me achieve at a greater level.
The best entrepreneurs are those that can maintain a high level of enthusiasm through failure. I mean, it really is like, or optimism, just like, yeah, that was hard and I really failed and that sucks, but yeah, I'm gonna keep going.
Yeah.
Let's just see what's around the next corner.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about that. We've had a little bit of failure. We've started to move along. We've struggled enough. We're starting to get a little progress, and then let's go to those people that are in that 100 doors to that
Yeah.
250. Those larger categories. Now, what did you see that they were able to do that helped them grow? And I'm we haven't discussed this, but I know you had companies that were way larger than 250 doors.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of like where you started that next category. But maybe what were just ballparkish some of the larger franchises that you had?
Yeah, we several over 1,000. very large companies with 25 to 50 employees. I think our largest, actually, I don't know today.
Yeah.
It's well, could be well over 2,000 today, but yeah, the reason why I hone in on that 250 as kind of a key number, the skills that it takes to get, above that are about people management and, delegating successfully and really like starting to, it's a whole new set of skills that you have to learn at that point. But those skills once learned are extremely scalable. I mean, if you've gotten to that amount, you understand, for the most part, people management and you understand process management, you know how to market and you know how to sell. And if you can just slowly remove yourself and hire better people than you at each of those departments, you will continue on the journey and continue to scale. So there's not that much difference, in my opinion, from what a company over 700 doors is doing compared to a company over 300 doors. They're very, very similar in what the challenges that they have.
So one of the things that I like to, it's a little bit of a tagline, and I say it kind of when I'm dealing with somebody that's just too far down in the weeds. I tell people I'm in the entrepreneur extraction business. My job is to help
I like
extract
that.
you
Yeah.
from the day to day. And as people kind of went through that growth cycle, did you see people having that ability to shift from being, okay, I grew this thing from nothing or next to nothing to something that's fairly significant, but I'm still in the day to day because I
Oh
haven't
yeah.
set up my KPIs.
Oh
I
yeah.
haven't done. So, were you able to help them, or any secrets or nuggets of how to get from being that operator and really owning a business at this point, as opposed to I am the genius with many assistants, as opposed to, we want them to be the conductor of the orchestra where they've got masters playing every instrument.
The best part about that, Tony, is that problem is not a property management problem. It is a small
Right.
business problem. And so for a very young business, you have property management problems, right? When you're like under 100 doors, you're dealing with PM problems.
Yeah.
When you reach over that and you start to grow and encounter what you're talking about, the number of resources available to you skyrocket. So we used a model called Traction,
Hmm.
which is the entrepreneur operating system. You guys probably already know what that is. If you don't, look it up. It's a very accessible, very easy to use and implement. But something like that, which is available to all small businesses, you have to move and systematize your business in that way in order to take it to the next level. So if you're stuck in that, usually, I don't know, maybe 200 to 350 range, or 200 to even all the way up to 400, I've seen businesses where the entrepreneurs are just still so in the day to day that they've created a job for themselves. Now it's time to start to move away from that and getting a system that helps run your business. And you mentioned KPIs, crucial. In fact, like we don't even start to talk about KPIs with new businesses until they're well over 100, maybe over 200 doors, where you're like, okay, if you were on a beach in Tahiti and you wanted to check in and see how your business was doing, what would you need to see? What are
Hmm.
what are those items that would tell you that you're winning or losing? Or, what about in maintenance? Are you winning or losing? How do you know? What are the KPIs?
Yeah.
Leasing, same thing. And so, yeah, just the conversations change, and it's exciting to help a business go from, that growth phase into this ultimate level at PMI, which we call the diamond businesses. And there's maybe 25 diamond businesses that are worth over $1 million at the PMI. That's like the ultimate. You get a diamond pin, it's like you've achieved, $1 million business. That was the big goal.
Yeah. So just, I don't want to make any assumptions for the audience. So anytime we use an abbreviation, I'm guilty of it. I did it. So I want to circle back around and talk. So KPIs are just key performance indicators. Those are the things that we would, like you said, if you're on a beach, what are those metrics? If I could only get certain insights into my company, those are the key performance indicators that I would want to track. Like you said, are we up or down? If you were to look at those operators that had a big enough business that they should be able to extract themselves
Mm.
and stop being the chief operator and start being more of that business owner. What do you think was the biggest thing that kept people from being able to make that transition? And what do you think was one of the biggest um, secrets or nuggets that helped people that were successful in making that transition?
That is a really good question. I think the inhibitor for many is control. It's this sense that if they're not doing it, they're not confident that it's being done right. And that can be really hard to overcome, especially for an entrepreneur who, like, they believe in themselves. They have ultimate confidence in themselves, and that's why they're where they are. In a lot of cases, they've driven that with their will. So to make the next step to trust someone else, it all comes down to hiring the right people. For example, I can name many businesses at PMI where if you ask them what made you allowed you to make that jump, they wouldn't say anything about themselves. They would name a person. They would have that name ready to go. Oh, it was Nathan. When I brought Nathan into my business, everything changed. And so I feel like that's kind of the key, is the right people in place doing the right things at the company, that allows that jump to happen.
A lot of these businesses that you were working with, they started, like you said, they had experience in other industries. They had to have a little bit of money because, and we don't need
Sure.
to get into
Yeah.
the details, but there is a cost associated
Yeah.
with purchasing a franchise. So they had a little bit of capital. Maybe they used all their capital. I don't know, but at some point they had to not only figure out how to make it work for them, but then add these employees, and that could be scary because I finally start to put some money in my pocket, and now you want me to take it out and give it to
Yeah.
somebody else. Like it seems like that would be kind of a hard.
Very hard.
There's a leap of faith there that you've got to have
Definitely.
things put together.
Yeah, and in fact, that's one of the reasons why the number of doors for each section are so important. So at 30, 30 is the number where you are covering your expenses for your business. You're covering your website costs, you're covering your location costs, you're covering, all the tech that you need. 30 doors pays for a business. It doesn't make you any money, but it pays for a business. And then 80 doors is kind of that next threshold where if you are by yourself at 80, you're actually putting a little bit of money away. And it's not a lot of money, but it's enough for many families to be okay. Um, and then you scale from there. But that 80 number, as far as doors go, is if you want to take the step after 80, it's about involving the right people at that point. And then you just have to continue to scale that.
All right, let's kind of leap forward a little bit now. So we've gone through 10 years, right? It was 10 years,
10 years. Yeah.
10 years at PMI. And from there you said, okay, it's time for some transition, some new thing. Number one, I want to know, sometimes when things are going pretty well, it's easy to just leave it on cruise control, right? And
For sure.
and
Yeah.
so something made you decide, I've had a good run. And what ultimately wound up being your position there?
Vice president of commercial and residential.
Okay. So
So,
you just,
which is a fancy way for just saying I tried to put together the best systems. So I still did a lot of the training, but really just focused on the systems for property management franchises.
okay, I was going to transition, but I want to come back to that then.
Yeah, sorry.
So tell me your systems. I want to talk about, you mentioned you were really good at systems, and systems right now, there's some people in our space that are really pushing automate your processes. And I think it's a wrong message. I think it's the right message for the right people at the right time.
Sure.
But as the
Yeah.
overall global message of what needs to be done, I think I think we're leading people down the wrong path at the wrong time. And so we had this conversation just the other day about, I really believe that you have to have your core values and your your mission and the vision and stuff that comes from you as the leader, right? You have to define what success looks like before you can communicate that to anybody else,
Agreed. Yeah.
right? So you have that down, and then you have to know what your policies are, because processes only exist if a policy triggers it, right? There's some policy you have that now something happens and then that triggers the process. And so we have had this conversation about at what point is the right time to start documenting policy, documenting process, then automating process. And so since you're my systems guy here, let's talk a little bit about what that looked like as you tried to roll that out.
I just wanted to connect the dots because you talked about, your purpose in existing. Why are you a company? Why do you want to do property management? This is the conversation I always have with new franchises, right? Why do you want to do what it is you're doing? And I'm trying to draw out sort of the why behind the business. Because, for example, if they say that they want to help investors succeed in having great investments, whatever that is, the why can help to shape the policy of what you're trying to do. So oftentimes the why behind the business shapes the what, and then the processes is kind of the third step. So it goes purpose, policy, then process. Because the process is simply designed to, so I'll give you an example. One of the ladies that started a business, very, very interesting gal out of New Jersey. She had a history of working with tenants in emergency services, so providing chillers, air conditioners, like during massive hurricanes and problems. To quote her, an hour feels like forever for a tenant who doesn't have what they need in that moment. So for her, that 1 hour, she defined her whole business around the idea that she would respond within an hour, always. She put processes, that was the policy. Anybody who came to work with her knew, we respond within an hour. And then she put processes in place to make sure that within that hour, they were always responded to. And it's really helped her build a very successful business on that idea. And so that's just one example of how the systems can connect. They come later, right? At PMI, one of the reasons why you would buy a franchise is because you want to have a shortcut to a lot of that built technology to help deliver on whatever it is that your vision is. That changes by person. Even though PMI is one brand, each person could have a different idea for how they want to deliver property management. And they can use the systems differently. So when you talk about systems, I mean, things like a core software management for, what is your core accounting platform? What CRM are you using? How are you going to answer your phones? And are you going to use technology around that? What about after hours and weekends? And what about maintenance management? So those are kind of all the systems behind the scene on how to deliver what the purpose is.
And through those systems, you gave people a roadmap with sort of boundaries on each side of the road, but they still were able to kind of figure out, I guess, which side of the road they want to drive on, but where they
Yeah,
wanted to go down the lane.
and that's why you always have to start with the why, because if you don't, they're looking for a message help. They're like, what should I say?
Yeah.
And it's more like, what's important to you? Why did you start the business? What are you trying to do? That's what you say. That's what you talk about. That's your purpose.
Yeah. I'll throw in just one last little nugget on this, and then we can transition into what you're doing now. But one of the things that we walk people through when we're doing the coaching around that, the core values, the mission, the vision, the other component of this framework that I call the game plan, really getting your game plan together before you take the field, so to speak, is getting really clear on your core values, why you want to do the business, what you see the business looking like in the future. And then the last component of that, or the next component of it, is getting really clear and defining your target client profile. And you can have more than one, but I recommend people start with one because most people don't have any. So getting really clear on that, because you talk about I don't know what to say. I don't know when I'm out there prospecting, or like, what makes me different than the other person besides just being the cheapest? Well, here's how you define that. You get really clear on what your target client profile looks like. And we walk through the exercise to do that. But then you figure out, by determining who they are demographically, psychographically, all of these different things, you start landing on what their key pain points are. And now I'm talking to their pain points. I'm not talking about property management. I'm
Yeah,
talking about solving their pain points. And that takes me out of all the noise that's out there from all the other property management companies.
you nailed it. And if you'll allow this for just a second, this is kind of a fun thing because in my previous life, I don't know if I mentioned this, but I was a pharmaceutical sales rep. I did that for 7 years. And I was launching a new product in a market where, my competitor had 90% of the market. And so I thought to myself, well, how am I going to like even peel any of this market away? And it's exactly what you said. I identified one patient that for this product that I thought, and the data supported, was ideal. When you see this patient, choose my product. And so I completely changed my message. I didn't try to go in and just sell the whole property management or the entire enchilada. I went in and said, hey, listen, doc, when you see a 55-year-old lady with these symptoms, that's the perfect patient. That's all I'm asking for, is just that 55-year-old with these symptoms. And I saw my market share really start to move because I had narrowed in that ideal customer for me. So it's great advice. It's absolutely the place to start. And it gives you confidence too that, listen, for that client, I'm the right choice. That's another piece you have to have as an entrepreneur. You have to believe that you are the best choice. And even if it's just for that one client type, go after him and you'll see what happens.
Yep. All right. I think you and I could probably go on for days talking about that. Maybe one day we will, but I want to kind of bring us to where we are now. So at some point you decide 10 years is kind of, I've hit that decade mark. I don't know how that transition
Yeah.
came about. I'm curious, like, what made you decide to leave there, and what are you doing now?
Yeah, I think for me it's, I obviously super passionate about property managers generally, and I've always felt like the technology available to property managers in many ways has felt archaic, outdated. And so I met, the founders of RentVine and have been inspired by them and their vision for technology that can actually, that is built specifically for property managers, that is trying to strengthen the relationship that property managers have, the role that they play in the space. It just really aligned with this passion that I felt. That, and I really respected them as people. And so I think at some point you reach in your career, you're like, I just want to work with people that I love and respect and that I'm inspired by. And so the combination of that plus this idea of building a technology that is really empowering managers inspired me to end this 10-year journey with PMI and then join RentVine as their chief operating officer. So it's just been about a year since that happened. And it's been amazing. I've loved it. I have found a home culturally and in terms of people at this great company. And so that's the short of it. Yeah, right there.
I love it. And you deserve it. I've known
Well,
you for a
thanks,
while,
Tony.
and I know that's a good fit for you. I
Yeah.
am generally against doing infomercials in any of my
Good.
messaging, but I want you to talk a little bit more about RentVine, because it does seem to be kind of the sweetheart in the industry right now. And you guys do seem to have a lot. You get a lot of the airspace, of people talking about it, a lot of people transitioning over. And so I want to give you an opportunity to just kind of talk about,
Yeah.
number one, why you think that is. And then number two, what you see maybe the future of that software and how it impacts, because, your clients are my clients and vice versa. We share a similar client. We do different things for them, but both of us hope for tremendous success for our clients. And I'm curious, why do you think people are switching over to
Yeah.
RentVine? And then what do you see the future? Because if you just give them what they've got now, we're going to be stagnant. So where do you see either RentVine or property management software in general going in the future?
Yeah, well, I think the biggest reason why managers are joining RentVine is because of the open nature of the platform. So what that means is that with other property management software in the space, they very much tightly controlled how this technology stack, which basically just means a list of what you're using, Tenant Turner, Show Mojo, Z Inspector, the list of vendors that you'll find at a conference. Historically, it's been very difficult to find one piece of software that can work with all of them together. So that's one of the biggest reasons why companies are joining, is that RentVine has been built by John Ewan and his team on a very open platform, meaning that all of those vendors today are already integrated into RentVine. So as a property manager contemplating a switch or looking at, geez, I'm using 6 different vendors, do I have an opportunity to consolidate them moving into RentVine and or to easily integrate them? Because what is difficult from the day to day is logging into 5 or 6 different areas to manage your business. That's not ideal. It's not what employees want to do generally. And so we're trying to bring that all into one space. We're trying to make it very simple and easy, very modern. And at the end of the day, as I mentioned, the reason why I joined RentVine is because they built it specifically for property managers by property managers. We develop at RentVine based on the feedback that we hear from our customers. So it was built with a team of consultants who are property managers that you and I know and have known for many years in the space. And we adjust and build for the future blueprints that make sense. One example of that in a feature that we just launched was, it's kind of frustrating for owners and tenants logging into a portal to see a big RentVine logo or a big, insert the competitor logo, right? So we just launched a white label version of RentVine so that property managers can display their management company on the portal. That needs to be prominently featured so that we don't get calls about how to pay rent. And so just things like that. And it's little things, but it's a lot of things. And it's a mentality and a philosophy of how we're built. You talk about systems and processes. There's a lot of technology people that have popped up with various solutions in the property management space. And they exist because no PM software has built that all in one. Now, I'm not saying that RentVine has, but when you talk about around the corner and down the street and looking ahead, that's kind of what we look at as saying, what would make sense to continue to build in-house based on feedback that we're hearing from the market? What would make sense to partner? What would make sense for, acquisition? But at the end of the day, giving the property manager the power of over their technology is what we're trying to do.
I love it. All right. Before we close out,
Yeah.
uh, I want to talk a little bit about some adventure stuff that we're
Yes.
that we're that
Yes.
we got planned. So I'm going to let you kind of share with what we've got coming up, and the we can spill the dates, and then I will put a link for anybody that wants to apply. But maybe share a little bit about what we've done in the past and why we're doing it again.
Yeah, the why matters. Obviously, if there's anything out of this conversation, I think it's why matters. But a few years ago, I think you and a few other people organized a hike for property managers, and it was I don't even remember how I found the invitation or was allowed in. I'm very grateful though, because I don't know, there's something so powerful about doing, you know, an extremely challenging physical task that takes preparation and skill and togetherness, and doing it with peers in the industry, that I just found this amazing experience. So we hiked the rim to rim in the Grand Canyon, and it took it's almost a full marathon in and of itself, but you're hiking with tens of thousands of elevation change, and it's really hard. Um, but like even today, the memories and friendships that I formed on that difficult thing together remain. And so it's inspired you and I to do it again. And so we've got a permit, and you can share some of the details, Tony. But for me, it's just a passion project, and I just love that the relationships that you form. And it's not at all about talk about property management in the least. It's just about doing an amazing thing with people that I love and my peers. So I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you think?
All right, so I'll give you just a few of the details. So, yeah, and just to circle back around, the first time we did it was magical. It was I had so many people tell me that it was a life-changing event.
Yeah.
I think life has become so easy in the way that if it's too hot in our house, we turn up the air conditioning. If it's too cold, we turn on the heat. If we want something to eat, we get in our car and we drive through a drive-through to pick it up. And it's just we have all of these conveniences, but I think we going through struggle and coming out on the other side just does something to our self-confidence. It does something to our character. We know that we can struggle and we can persist and we can come out better on the other side. And through this event, we had so many people come together. And the first time we did it was, there was still COVID going on, and so people were locked in their houses and being told we're non-essential workers and all of that. And so as that started to lighten up, we came together, and I think at that point we had around 20 property management entrepreneurs, and we took them down. We've got a little bit bigger permit this time, and so we've got spaces, and unfortunately, I don't think we're going to have enough room for everybody that wants to go, but we definitely want everybody that is interested to apply, because the event itself, we are going to be around property managers. We wanted to have that kind of be the relationships that get built, because I met people on that hike that I'm still very close to today, because there's something about sharing a similar struggle or the same struggle with somebody. You open up, you build those relationships, you have something in common, and then you come out victorious together on the other side. They become a part of your inner circle. And now all of a sudden I've got people that I can call. Obviously you and I have known each other for a while, but our relationship there, I got to know you a lot better.
Yeah.
And I can call anybody that was on that hike with us and say, hey, I've got this issue I'm dealing with. Like, what do you think? Or I've got this opportunity, poke holes in it, And so while you say it's not about property management, it's about building relationships with people that will help you in property management in the future. But if you've ever seen pictures of the Grand Canyon, I guarantee you have no idea what the Grand Canyon looks like. When we were planning this, I kind of did a scouting the first time I went out and kind of scouted it, just said, okay, well, what is this going to actually look like? And when you show up to the rim of the Grand Canyon and you look at how vast it is, if you've seen it in a movie or you've seen it in pictures, you have a concept, but you just can't grasp it until you're standing at the top and then standing at the bottom and then standing at the top of the other side.
I love that. That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
So June 5th, 2025, is the day of the hike. And there will be, stuff around June 4th and June 6th. So it's kind of a 3-day commitment at minimum. And it's going to be fun. So I'm very excited. How can people apply or sign up, Tony?
Yeah, so I'll put the link wherever I can in the show notes. But in case you are driving or you can't get to it, just remember PM Success, like property management success. So it's pmsuccess.com/Grand Canyon. And that's just all one word, no dash or anything. And there'll be just a place to put in your name and email. And then when you submit that, it'll continue to the next step. We'll ask just a couple of questions just for around some safety things. And then we'll let you know when we've made the selections. But if you're at all interested, it's not a commitment. It's just, hey, I think this might be kind of cool. I'd like some more information about it. And, we're just doing it to get people together and build relationships and have fun. There's no other gotcha or what's the next thing. It's just, hey man, let's go out. And we had men and women that went down through, came out the other side, and a lot of the ladies did better than some of the men. So it's like everybody has the opportunity to come and do it and be successful at it and build those relationships.
And it includes, training programs and gear preparation, and it's really a cool thing to be a part of. So
Yeah.
encourage you to join. It'll be fun.
All right, Randall, I appreciate you so much. Thanks for hopping on. I got one last question for you.
Yeah.
If you were to flash forward 5 years from now, and I asked Randall, how's it been going? What have you been doing? What's life been like? What would you have to say?
Oh man. I'd probably be talking about my kids' success and my wife's success more so than mine, but um, RentVine is here to stay. We're building for the future. Our vision is to be the property management partner for all single family managers. And so we're aggressively pursuing that. We're going to listen and grow according to what property managers need. And so join us. Let's do it together.
Great. And I will put again in the show notes, I'll put how people can contact you. But do you want to share that here?
Rentvine.com.
Okay.
Yep. RENTVINE.
All right. Very good. Thanks again, Randall. Really appreciate it. And
Thanks, Tony.
look
Appreciate the
forward to getting in
conversation.
the canyon with you.
Same. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for tuning in to the Property Management Success Podcast. We'll be back with another value-packed episode to help you level up your property management game. If you've got something valuable out of today's episode, please share it with a friend or colleague, and don't forget to subscribe and leave a review so you never miss out on future insights and strategies and tactics. Until next time, here's to your success.